The sky above New York burned with streaks of crimson, the remnants of explosions rippling outward like a cursed skyward tide. Earth's cities had fallen one by one to the alien invaders. Each city surrendered without a fight, its people either enslaved or eradicated. All but one. One small, ragged outpost on the northeastern coast had resisted, and it wasn't from any military genius or superhuman technology. It was because of one man. Jason Voorhees stood on the roof of a ruined skyscraper, a towering figure amidst the smoke and chaos. His mask, a grotesque parody of a human face, glistened with the wet remnants of a dozen alien corpses. His machete, stained and dripping, gleamed under the faint moonlight. Jason had become Earth's final hope, though no one quite knew why. "That's the last one." A voice crackled over his comm. It was Sergeant Emily Hall, one of the few survivors of the failed military campaigns. She was holed up in a nearby building, monitoring the situation as best she could. "They're regrouping, but we're running out of time. You're our only shot at stopping them." Jason didn't respond. He never did. The silence of his movements was his trademark, and it was a stark contrast to the chaos around him. He stepped over the corpse of an alien warlord, its forearms twitching in a final, grotesque spasm, and looked toward the distant hills, where the enemy's massive warships hung ominously in the sky. They were coming. The warlords of the Galactic Empire. They had raised worlds for centuries, and now Earth was on their list. The invaders had sent their fiercest champions, alien leaders whose very presence could crush entire populations. With advanced technology, psychic powers, and the weight of 1,000 civilizations behind them, they were certain Earth would fall. But they hadn't counted on Jason. "Any updates from the field, Emily?" Jason's low grunt echoed through the comlink. It was the only sound he ever made when he spoke, deep, guttural, like an animal straining against its cage. "They're sending in more troops," she replied, the stress evident in her voice. "This isn't just about conquering Earth anymore. They're out for revenge." Jason's mask remained fixed, as expressionless as ever. His mission had begun as a mistake, a random survivor pulled into a war that was never his. But over time, something had clicked. His relentless, brutal drive for vengeance had aligned with Earth's last stand. The aliens had underestimated human resilience, and more importantly, they had miscalculated Jason's sheer ferocity. He wasn't merely a killer, he was a symbol of humanity's refusal to yield. "Where are they landing?" Jason's voice was cold, devoid of emotion, yet somehow brimming with authority. Emily wasn't used to hearing him speak, but when he did, every word was deliberate. "Sector 9, she responded quickly. "And they've got a full force coming. We won't last long." A low hum reverberated beneath Jason's feet as the ground trembled. One of the enemy warships had begun to land. Massive, armored ships with jagged edges and burning red lights, each brimming with the might of a galactic empire. The ships weren't just machines, they were alive with the alien energies that powered them. The warlords themselves had arrived. Jason turned, his machete still dripping with alien blood, and set off in the direction of the landing zone. He had no fear, only purpose. The warlords might have thought they could crush humanity, but they had never faced a force like him before. They would learn that soon enough. A mile away, the ground shook again, this time with more urgency. The first of the warlords emerged from the ship's hull, an alien towering over 12 feet, its body rippling with muscles. Its forearms were adorned with deadly weapons, each more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. The alien's skull was like an obsidian helmet, with glowing eyes that burned like twin suns. "General Zaknar." Emily's voice came through the calm, panic creeping into her words. "He's the leader of their invasion force. You've got to stop him, or we're done for." Jason's eyes shifted, narrowing beneath the mask as he moved into the shadows. He didn't need to hear any more. He was already in motion, a silent hunter. His machete would be the last thing the warlord would ever see. "General Zaknar," the alien said, its voice a harsh, guttural sound that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. It was speaking to a group of soldiers below, its 4 eyes scanning the horizon. "Prepare the troops. The humans believe they can resist. Let them feel their mistake. Jason didn't wait for the enemy to make its move. He was already upon them. His blade swung in a blur of motion, cutting down an alien soldier who hadn't even seen him coming. His approach was swift and unrelenting, each strike leaving nothing but death in its wake. The warlord hadn't even noticed him yet. But Jason knew better than to waste time. He needed to confront Zaknar before the tide of battle turned. The warlord growled as it turned, its eyes locking onto Jason, who stood mere feet away now, the reflection of the alien's red-tinged armor shining in his mask. You! Zaknar rumbled, its voice like thunder. A human? You think you can challenge me? Jason didn't speak. He didn't need to. He raised his machete, ready for battle. The fate of Earth, it seemed, rested on the shoulders of a man who had never once spoken a word. The air was thick with smoke, the stench of burning flesh and alien fuel blending into a choking cloud that hung low over the battlefield. Jason Voorhees stood in the center of it, his machete gleaming like a ghost in the shadows. The sounds of war filled the air, distant explosions, the crackle of energy weapons, the screams of soldiers and civilians alike. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was only silence in Jason's mind. His world had always been a silent one. The clatter of combat didn't faze him, it never did. The warlord Zaknar loomed before him like a mountain of malice. Its alien form was both terrifying and majestic, towering over Jason with 4 muscular arms, each clutching a different weapon, a jagged blade, a pulsing energy rifle, and 2 vicious-looking claws. The alien's eyes were pools of molten fire, glowing brighter as it studied its opponent. You have made a grave mistake, human. Zaknar's voice rumbled, deep and resonant. Your planet is already doomed. Your people's defiance will be crushed underfoot. Jason's mask remained impassive, his grip tightening around the hilt of his machete. He wasn't here to talk. Words had never been part of his lexicon. He was here to fight. Without another word, Jason charged. The ground beneath his boots cracked with the force of his sprint, a blur of movement, as he closed the distance between himself and the towering warlord. Zaknar raised its massive arm, swinging the energy blade in a lethal arc. Jason ducked just in time, the weapon whistling past him with a blast of heated air. The alien's sheer strength was terrifying, but Jason was faster. He ducked again, this time ducking low under the second swipe, his machete slicing through the air in a smooth, calculated arc. He connected with Zaknar's thigh, the blade sinking deep into the alien's armored flesh, sending a shower of sparks flying. The warlord howled in pain, but its movements didn't slow. It staggered back, only momentarily thrown off balance. Fool! Zaknar growled, jerking its arm to shake Jason off. You will regret this. Jason's eyes never left the warlord. He didn't need to hear it speak. It was only a matter of time before the alien made a fatal mistake. Every creature did. And that mistake was always the same, underestimating humanity's will to survive. Zaknar lunged forward, a primal roar escaping its throat. Jason sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against it. With a swift move, he slammed the back of his machete into the warlord's armored head. The blow landed with a sickening crunch, but Zaknar didn't fall. It spun in midair, kicking out with a leg that sent Jason crashing into a nearby pile of rubble. Jason grunted, his body hitting the ground with bone-jarring force. But even as his head swam, his hand was already reaching for his weapon, his fingers tightening around the familiar grip. He didn't flinch. Pain was just another part of the battle. You're persistent. Zaknar spat, its voice filled with contempt. I admire that. But it won't save you. Jason rose to his feet slowly, shaking off the disorientation. He wiped a trickle of blood from his brow with the back of his gloved hand, eyes locked onto Zaknar. His movements were deliberate, measured. There was no fear in him. No hesitation. You're right. Jason's voice came, low and rough, the first words he had spoken in hours. It won't save me. But it will save them. With a howl, Jason charged again, this time aiming for the warlord's exposed chest. Zaknar raised its claws in defense, but Jason was already too close. He brought the machete down hard, aiming for the alien's weak point, the soft underbelly beneath the thick armor. The blade sank into the flesh, meeting resistance at first, but with a final, forceful strike, it broke through. Zaknar's body twitched violently as Jason twisted the machete, carving a path of destruction within. The Warlord's roar was deafening, its forearms flailing wildly as it staggered back, but it was already too late. The light in its eyes began to dim as its body crumpled to the ground. Jason stepped back, watching as the colossal alien fell to the earth with a thunderous crash. Its claws twitched once, twice, and then went still. He stood over the body, his chest rising and falling with each steady breath, his machete still in hand, slick with blood. He hadn't won the war, but the first battle was his. The Warlords had lost their leader, their champion. Earth's last stand had just begun. A faint crackle sounded through his comms. Emily's voice, shaky but clear, broke through the silence. "Jason, did you do it?" Jason didn't respond right away. He just stood there, staring down at the fallen warlord. "Yes," he finally said, his voice quiet but certain. "He's down." There was a pause on the other end, and then Emily's voice returned, softer, but filled with renewed hope. "Then we have a chance. We can fight back." Jason's grip on the machete tightened. The Warlords may have lost their leader, but the war was far from over. A new wave of soldiers was already descending from their ships, and the alien fleet had not been put on hold. He turned and began walking toward the ruins of the city. The night was far from over, and Earth had only begun to fight back. In the distance, the glow of alien ships flickered like a deathly star. The battle had shifted, but Jason knew this was only the beginning. If Earth was to survive, there was still much to be done, and Jason would be the one to ensure it happened. He was humanity's last hope, and the Warlords were about to learn just how dangerous a cornered human could be. The silence after the battle was deafening. For a moment, Jason stood in the middle of the ruined city, his breathing heavy and ragged, as if the weight of what he had done had finally caught up with him. His machete was still slick with alien blood, but the adrenaline from the fight was fading quickly, leaving him with a sharp sense of reality. The warlord might have fallen, but the war was far from over. A blast from the sky snapped him back to attention, a sudden streak of light that carved through the clouds overhead. He didn't need to look up to know what it was. The reinforcements had arrived. Jason turned to his communicator. "Emily, status update." "Now." "Give me a second," came her strained reply, her voice crackling with static. "We've got incoming. A whole fleet. Thousands of ships. They're coming from all directions." Jason didn't hesitate. "Prepare the last line of defense. I'm coming to you." "We don't have much time," Emily warned. "They're going to be here in 15 minutes. Maybe less. You need to hurry." Jason didn't need to be told twice. His muscles tensed, and without another word he took off, his feet pounding against the debris-strewn streets, as he raced toward their makeshift command center. As he ran, his mind churned. The Warlord's death had struck a blow to the alien invaders, but the alien fleet was vast. They wouldn't give up easily. This was just the beginning of humanity's last stand, and Jason was at the heart of it. By the time he reached the command center, the team was already hard at work, frantically preparing for the oncoming assault. Emily was at the helm, her fingers flying over a holographic display, coordinating the few forces they had left. The look on her face was one of determination, but also exhaustion. "Where's everyone else?" Jason asked, his eyes scanning the room. "They're setting up the perimeter," she answered, not looking up. "But they won't last long without support. These ships are huge, and they're coming in fast." Jason nodded grimly. "I'll make sure we last long enough." "You're not the only one fighting this time," Emily said, finally meeting his gaze. "We have a few surprises left up our sleeves. But it's going to be tight." Jason's eyes flickered to the nearby window, where the first of the alien ships was descending, their sleek forms cutting through the clouds. There was no turning back now. "We've still got the EMP devices, right?" Jason asked. "Ready to go," Emily confirmed. But they'll only disable their ships for a few minutes. After that, we're on our own. Jason turned away from the window, his jaw set with determination. We'll take what we can get. We don't have time to waste. The others in the room were already gathering their gear. There were only a handful of them. Most of their allies had already fallen in the earlier skirmishes. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in resolve. The human spirit was stubborn, relentless. Jason had seen it in the eyes of every soldier, every civilian, who had refused to kneel to the invaders. We've trained for this, Emily said, as if reading his thoughts. She handed him a small, compact device. This is our last shot. Don't miss. Jason took the device without a word. It was a prototype energy weapon, designed to cut through alien armor with pinpoint precision. He had seen it in action before, but never in a real fight. Now, it was their only hope. Without another word, he moved to the door. Let's get to work. As they moved out, the distant roar of the alien ships grew louder. Jason's instincts kicked in. The mission was clear: hold the line. Buy as much time as possible. Destroy as many of the invaders as they could. It was all or nothing now. The first wave of ships crashed into the Earth's atmosphere with a deafening thunder, their massive hulls screaming through the sky. Jason and the others were already in position, hidden in the shadows of the crumbling cityscape, ready to launch their attack. Jason's heart raced. There was no room for error. He aimed the energy weapon at the first ship, his finger hovering over the trigger. One shot was all it would take. No! Emily's voice came through his earpiece, sharp and commanding. Jason squeezed the trigger. A brilliant, concentrated beam of energy shot forward, striking the alien vessel dead center. The ship shuddered, then exploded in a burst of fire and metal. The shockwave rocked the city, but Jason barely flinched. One down, thousands to go. Nice shot, Emily said, a hint of relief in her voice. But Jason didn't allow himself to relax. The fleet was relentless, and this was just the beginning. The next wave of ships was already descending, their weapons charging, their intentions clear. I'll cover the north side, Jason said, already moving to a new position. You handle the rest. Got it, Emily replied. As Jason moved, the sounds of battle intensified. Explosions lit up the sky, sending debris flying in every direction. The alien forces were overwhelming, but the humans weren't backing down. Jason fought with everything he had. His machete cut through alien forces with brutal efficiency, and the energy weapon he carried became an extension of his will. But the tide of the battle was shifting, and the odds were growing steeper. The Warlords might have lost their leader, but the enemy was relentless. Jason paused for a moment to scan the sky. More ships were coming. They wouldn't be able to hold them off for long. His comms buzzed again. Emily's voice was frantic. Jason, we've got a bigger problem. A new ship, larger than anything we've seen before, just entered the atmosphere. It's heading straight for us. Jason's gaze snapped back to the horizon. The skies were filled with fire and smoke, but this new ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was massive, its sleek, dark hull glowing with an ominous light. Get the EMP ready, Jason barked, his voice cold with determination. We're going to need it. As the enormous alien ship descended, Jason tightened his grip on his weapons. This was it. The final battle was about to begin. And he would not let humanity fall. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and the acrid stench of scorched earth. Jason stood at the edge of the battlefield, his muscles aching, his body covered in dust and blood. The distant rumble of alien ships in the sky was constant now, a low, menacing hum that filled the air with a sense of doom. Above him, the massive alien warship loomed, its dark silhouette blocking out the sun as it descended steadily toward the city. They're coming! Emily's voice crackled through his earpiece. She sounded calm, but Jason could hear the urgency in her tone. Jason's gaze remained fixed on the behemoth overhead. How much time do we have? Minutes. Maybe less. The EMP devices are ready, but it'll only delay them. We need something more, something to hit them where it hurts. Jason's grip tightened around the handle of his weapon. He didn't have to ask what she meant. The alien fleet was invincible, and the warship descending from the sky was its heart. Taking it out was their last hope, and it was a slim one at best. I'll do what I can, he said. Just make sure the others are in position. He didn't wait for a reply. Turning on his heel, Jason sprinted through the broken city streets toward the central plaza. His mind raced, each step echoing in his ears as he processed the plan. They had no time for hesitation. He couldn't afford to think about the odds, about how small their chances were. The plaza was chaotic, filled with soldiers preparing for their last stand. The air was thick with tension, but even amid the madness, Jason spotted Emily, calm, focused, as she directed the remaining fighters into position. The few survivors from their earlier defense were scattered around the plaza, each of them readying their weapons, checking their armor, preparing for the worst. Jason! Emily called out, her voice cutting through the din. You've got to get to the tower. The EMP will be useless unless we can hit them directly. Jason nodded, understanding immediately. The EMP's pulse would disable the fleet's technology temporarily, but they needed to get close enough to strike at the ship's core, to disable its systems for good. The tower, an old, ruined skyscraper, was their vantage point. It was the only way to get close enough to land a shot. He darted toward the structure, weaving through wreckage and debris. His eyes were sharp, his senses heightened, as he moved. Each footfall felt heavier than the last, the weight of the world pushing down on him. But he couldn't stop. Not now. When he reached the tower, he found the makeshift team already assembling, preparing the last-ditch weapons. A few of them looked up as Jason arrived, their faces set with grim determination. You sure about this? One of them asked. It was a woman, short and tough-looking, her face streaked with soot and exhaustion. Jason nodded without saying a word. He turned to the controls, a tangle of wires and makeshift panels, and began to work, his fingers moving deftly across the interface. The weapon was crude, barely functional, but it was their best shot. Emily's voice came again, this time with an edge of desperation. Jason, the ship is firing! Jason's heart skipped a beat as he heard the unmistakable roar of the alien ship's weapons charging. A shockwave rocked the city, followed by the high-pitched whine of energy blasts. The ground trembled beneath Jason's feet, and he barely managed to keep his balance. Almost there, he muttered under his breath, his hands moving faster now, his fingers flying over the panel as he keyed in the final sequence. Above him, the alien warship unleashed its first volley. It was massive, the energy blasts streaking across the sky like deadly meteors. One of them hit a nearby building, sending a plume of fire and debris into the air. Another hit the plaza, sending soldiers scattering for cover. Jason gritted his teeth. There was no more time for mistakes. Finally, with a sharp click, the weapon hummed to life. The tower's systems whirred as the EMP pulse was activated. A crackling energy field surrounded the device, building with power. Jason's pulse quickened as the energy wave began to pulse outward, stretching toward the descending alien ship. The sky seemed to darken further, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Jason knew this moment would either save humanity or seal their fate. Emily's voice was frantic. It's working! They're losing power! But even as she spoke, Jason could see the alien ship falter in the sky, its weapons powering down in response to the EMP. The ship's descent slowed for a brief moment, but it wasn't enough. The momentary victory felt hollow. They had only bought themselves time, and time was quickly running out. They're going to recover, Jason said, more to himself than anyone else. He could see it in the way the alien ship was adjusting its course. It would take more than an EMP to bring them down. And then he saw it. At the heart of the ship, a brilliant, pulsating light, an energy core, began to glow brighter. Jason's stomach dropped as he realized the ship was preparing to unleash something far more dangerous than its previous barrage. This was their last chance to stop them. Emily! Jason shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. Do you have a clear shot? I'm working on it. Emily's voice crackled back, but Jason could hear the stress in her tone. They were running out of time, and the alien ship's weapons were powering up again, stronger this time. Jason's fingers danced over the controls of the tower's weapon system, tweaking the alignment, adjusting the frequency of the EMP pulse. They couldn't afford to miss. His thoughts were a blur as he worked, only one thing in his mind: take the shot. Destroy the core. He gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. It was now or never. The tower's weapon fired, sending a crackling, violet beam of energy streaking into the sky toward the alien ship. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then, everything exploded.